All right, guys. So today I kind of want to go over real quick. The other day I showed you a little bit about sketching, but I wanted to show you some of us, are visual people and we like to see things get done. And after that, I want to go a little bit over coloring with colored pencils. For a lot of times for these warm-ups, colored pencils is the best way to go. Some of us will be like, I love markers. Markers are good, but colored pencil will give you that nice, if you do it right, that nice soft even feel that you can't get with anything else. So the first thing I do, and I'm gonna do this in marker, if I was doing this on my paper without video, I would do it in pencil super light. I would do it so light that it would be hard to see on the paper, and for that reason, I am doing this in the marker. So let's pretend that this gray marker would be considered my pencil marks. So, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this one, but first thing I do is I try to split my paper, like I said, depending on the picture. Sometimes I split it into top and bottom, sometimes I split it into left and right, and sometimes I'll split it into this nice quadrant, left, right, top, bottom. So for this picture, that's kind of what I did. Next thing I did is by looking at the picture that's on the board, I kind of mentally drew and split it up the same way. And after doing that, I kind of noticed that their hands, the characters' hands were maybe like right there. One of the characters, kind of this bean-shaped looking dude here. This other one kind of here. I have this guy with like an afro. This girl more of a flat head coming up this way. And this pretty much would be my sketch. This is what I would start with. You might think, well, what the heck is that? Well, this just kind of gives me an idea of where things go. For some reason, I'm right on the edges of my paper. If for some reason it had been too big, then I would draw these things a little bit smaller to make them fit on my paper. If after I sketched, I had a bunch of empty space, then I would have drawn my sketch a little bit bigger just so I can fill more of the page. So this tells me what my plan is, and it kind of gives me an idea of where things go. This doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna follow this exactly, but it gives me a good idea of where things go. And like I said the other day, if this was a English class, I guess this would be considered your rough draft. And now, what's the next step? So you're gonna take a look at the picture on the board and you're gonna think to yourself, okay, so to me, what is the easiest part to draw? And then that's where you'll start. For me, I think I'm gonna try to get the shape of the characters, and then I think if I can get that, everything else would fall in line. So if the hands are here, I go a little bit up, that's kind of where the mouth is. So I'm gonna start drawing the shape of this guy. He kind of goes down like this. And then he has like these bumps, 1, 2, 3, 4 bumps at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are kind of weird, so I'm gonna make this one bigger. 2, 3, 4. Like I said, and I'm doing it in marker so you can see on the board, but this would be pencil. I would be continuing with pencil. I just want to show you the different steps. Then once I have that, I would kind of draw the mouth in here. Maybe a little bit bigger. As you can see, I'm not trying to draw exactly. A lot of my lines are kind of loose and scribbly because at the end, I would come in and try to finish those off with some nice, strong, finished lines. I have an eye there. I have an eye there. Kind of has that lid at the bottom. He's looking at his honey. All right, a couple of eyebrows. And then from his eye, it kind of goes down into the body. A little bit of the hair there. And then he has his little afro. It starts about there, goes over. Oh, and it ends below his eye. So it goes something like that. And this would be my interpretation of Oscar. I'm trying to finish him up, just a couple of things like the stripes on his. And he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes. 3, 4, 5. That would kind of be my drawing. The only thing I'm missing is like the inside the mouth. I would probably leave that. I would keep working on this other stuff and come back to that. Okay? So I would continue doing this. My last step, for us that draw really dark in pencil, I said if you are going to outline in marker and Sharpie and these black felt tip markers, I would highly recommend to take a big eraser and just go over your lines to make them lighter. So if this was a dark pencil line, by doing this, it would make your pencil much lighter, and then you can finish off by doing some good final lines, like your final copy. So that would be the step of drawing. And the good thing is, as you build up, then you should know what lines you want to use, and you can make them look like a nice finished product. And then at the end, you erase all the pencils, all the pencil lines you don't need, and you would be done with your drawing. And I know it's kind of hard to see with this marker, and you're like, what the heck? There's gray marker, there's blue marker, and there's black marker. But it kind of just shows you, maybe hopefully you can see the difference between the colors a little bit, what it looks like as I'm going from a sketch to a finished drawing. And this mouth. And for you guys that kind of see as you're tracing that you're having a hard time being consistent, you know, you might look at mine and say, holy crud, he's doing this all very well and nice straight lines. Listen, it takes practice. You know, it takes practice from, you know, it takes practice to learn how to sketch. It takes practice to learn how to build up your pictures. And it takes practice to give yourself a nice, consistent final line. So if you're not able to do this at the beginning, you know, don't get frustrated. It'll be okay. All right, so that would be mine. Like I said, if this was pencil, I would get rid of all this blue and gray, and I would be left with my final black finish lines, my final lines, and it would look like a nice completed drawing. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is adding color. So first, colored pencils, they're great. Colored pencils, the thing is they have wax as a binder. You know, that's what the wax is, what holds this colored rod together. So first, be very careful with these. Please don't throw them. I have some people that think these are drumsticks. It usually doesn't happen a lot, but some do, and they'll start tapping on the table. If you drop these too much, if you tap them, if you don't take care of them, they're going to break. And I'm not talking about physically, the wood thing is gonna break in half and it's not gonna be no good. I'm talking about how the colored core, if it gets damaged, it breaks on the inside of the wood casing. So this core would get broken on the inside of this case in many sections. Now, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you do get a bad colored pencil, you could go sharpen it and you might start using it and the lead falls out. Like, what the heck? You go sharpen it again. As you color, oh, the lead keeps falling out. Well, the reason it does that is because it's already broken, and the lead, the colored rod on the inside, is already broken in many sections because something happens to that pencil. So for that reason, we need to take care of these. Don't throw them. Be careful not to drop them, and that way they last for us a long time. So a lot of people, when they color, and I'm just going to color on this side on here a little bit, they have a tendency to, you know, color in one direction, press on their, you know, a lot of us like to press and give like a super dark layer, and you think, oh man, that looks pretty nice. That's another thing that some people do. Here, let me get a little bit closer. Oh, my bad. There it is. Really dark in one layer. Some of us color, you know, light and leave a lot of gap in between our strokes. White gap, that's another thing. So let me tell you what we need to do to create a nice even color. First of all, we got to think about the paper that you're coloring on. This paper has something that's called tooth. So it has, kind of looks like this, right? If you put it under a microscope, it's not going to be totally flat. It's going to have ridges, ups and down. That's called the tooth of the paper. And even if you try your best to color in one layer, you know, a lot of times you're going to be left with these white, like specks, I guess you can call it, white specks that don't fill in. The reason is because paper has a tooth. That means if you're coloring in one direction, say you're going this way, as you're coloring, you know, you're hitting all these areas, but then you miss the low side of the tooth. So you're hitting all these sides, and as you color, you know, you're coloring and you're missing all these areas because of the tooth of the paper. So how do you fix that? Well, the correct way to color with colored pencils is to color in layers. And each layer, we're not gonna do it super dark. We do not want to color like this in one super dark layer, because if you do, the wax in this colored pencil will come to the surface. And if you don't believe me, get yourself a little piece of, you know, on a little piece of scratch paper and color a piece like super dark in one layer. Right, do that. And then in a couple of days, maybe by next week, the end of next week, you'll notice that the wax in this colored pencil has risen to the surface, and it gives you like this white crusty look. And you could even like scrape it off. You know, so that, depending on how hard you color, depending on the color itself, it might take a couple of days to wax bloom. It might take a couple weeks, but that is something you do not want to happen to your work. So in order for it not to wax bloom and to be nice and consistent, we want to color in layers a little at a time. So I know that this is not the color of his hair, but I'm gonna color red. So the first thing I'm doing, if I was gonna color his hair, I'm gonna start in one direction. Small strokes, little sections at a time. So I'm starting up and down. The only thing I want to be moving is my fingers and my wrist. You do not want to be moving your entire arm like this. It's small sections, a little at a time. And this would be considered my first layer of my coloring. Now the pressure that I'm using is not too hard, but not that soft. It's a medium pressure. And oh, and another thing, as I'm coloring, sometimes the color gets kind of flat on one side. If you just rotate that a little bit, you'll get another sharp edge. And you just work it, work it, work it. So as I'm coloring, I'm always rotating my color pencil to make sure I have a nice sharp edge to work with. So this would be considered my first layer. Like I said, small sections. Try not to leave spaces like I did here. Make sure you have a nice even coverage. Don't rush it. Layer number one. This will be my first layer. All right, second layer. The second layer, I'm gonna go in the opposite direction. So for me, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my paper because it's easier for me. And my second layer, I'm gonna start here. Same pressure. I am not pushing down any harder. It's just that now what's gonna happen with the second layer, it's gonna kind of double up on the pigment and make it darker. For some of us, it kind of looks like, oh, he's pushing down harder because it's getting darker. No, same pressure. It's just that since we're adding another layer, it's gonna get darker and darker. Now, like I said, the reason we wanna color in layers first is because we don't want the wax bloom. Second, because we don't want to have any directional lines. So in order to have a successful colored pencil, you need to be able to have a nice, even coverage without being able to tell what direction you went in. So if you look at your picture and you say, oh, I can see what direction I colored in, I went this way. Then, some people, they go like, they color like that. If you can see your directional lines up and down, then you need to keep adding layers and you need to, work in smaller sections. So for that reason, we color in layers. So we don't have a wax bloom, and so that we have a nice, even coverage with no directional lines. And depending on what I look like, if I still don't like what this looks like, then I might go with a third layer. And I'll go in another direction. For this one, I'm gonna go at a diagonal and add a layer that way. So that will be, for me, usually 3 layers should be good enough. Sometimes if I'm doing, I don't want to say professional, but a drawing that I want to frame or that I want to, if I'm selling it, then I'll take my time and do 4 layers. But this is kind of what it looks like as a finished piece. So this is 1 layer right here, 1 layer. This one right here is 2 layers. And this one right here at the end is 3 layers. So that you can kind of see what it looks like. And that's what we're looking for. Nice, even coverage, work in small sections, layers, no directional strokes. And that's how you use colored pencil. All right? Hope you use this in your warm-ups. Make them look well.